Wellington, which nobody picked before. And that pole position was won by Dick Johnson, who's down now, about to be presented with the prize, which totals $7,000 for having got the quickest lap and pole. Dick Johnson standing quietly along with Neville Crichton, who was the second fastest qualifier. Dick Johnson's pole time, by the way, on this circuit is 1:32.49. Neville Crichton second at 1:33.67. So Dick Johnson very, very clearly the winner. The first time he put up that time, it wasn't acknowledged because it wasn't recorded. He subsequently did that time 3 times in the space of a day, going under 1:33. He's the only driver who has gone under 1:33. And 3 times during the space of yesterday's practice, we saw him go out and really go for it. Let's have a look at the drivers in this international field of Group A cars. Tom Walkinshaw, the European Touring Car Champion for 1984, teamed with Ron Dixon from Australia. Kent Bagent and Neil Lowe, the New Zealand pairing from Auckland at the BMW 635 CSI. Another of the BMWs, Neville Crichton and Wayne Wilkinson, another Auckland pairing, and 2 that are well known in New Zealand. Peter Brock and Larry Perkins from Australia need no introduction. The Holden Commodore VK making its world premiere. Frank Sittner and John Morton. Frank Sittner from England, John Morton from New Zealand in the 3rd of the BMW 635 CSIs. Lou McKinnon and John Power from New Zealand in the Holden VK, the 2nd of the VKs making a world premiere in Group A. Robert Belbin and Chris Belbin from New Zealand in the Commodore VH, that's the old SS model. Michel Delcourt and Robbie Francevic. Delcourt from Belgium, Francevic from New Zealand. The cars, the 240 GT Turbo Volvo. Dick Johnson, the pole setter from Australia. Bruce Anderson from New Zealand team with him in the Ford Falcon. Bill McFarlane and Wayne Murdoch from New Zealand in the Ford Capri V6. Gary Patterson and Dave McMillan in the Fiat Abarth 130 TC. 2 of those in the race, the other driven by Bob Barry and Rob Whitehouse. Glenn McIntyre and Dennis Roderick in the Isuzu Gemini ZZ, twin cam version of this car. Chris Hayer and Graham McGregor, an Australian and a New Zealander in the Audi 80. Kevin Ryan and Ian Tulloch, otherwise known as Inky Tulloch, the Nissan Bluebird Turbo. Raymond Gulson and Grant O'Donnell from Australia in the Alfa Romeo GTV 6, which has been rebuilt engine-wise overnight. Paul Adams and Alan Wolfe, the father-in-law of the former, in the Toyota Corolla GT. Bob Holden from Australia and Glenn Clark from New Zealand in another Corolla GT. Colin McGregor and Graham McGregor from New Zealand, father and son team in the VW Golf GTI. And that makes up the field. Just before we go any further, we might have a word with a man called Tim Schenken. The name might not mean a lot to viewers, but the name Bathurst does, and he's the fellow who has organised it since its inception.
Well, Ivan Stibbard, you're the man behind the famous Bathurst race in Australia. What do you think of this?
Well, it's different, and I think it's fantastic.
Do you see a place for a street race like this in Australia?
Yes, of course, there's been many discussions on a street race in Australia like this, but nothing's eventuated at this stage, except for the Grand Prix, which comes up later this year.
Why have there been problems getting street races going, not only in Australia, but all around the world, haven't there?
I guess the main thing is expense, plus the red tape, of course, all the problems you've got associated with councils, etc. But obviously they've overcome those here.
Ivan, I think something all New Zealanders want to know is, why is Bathurst so magic? Why have you managed to get that race so fantastic? What's the formula?
Well, I wish I could say there was something to it, but I guess it's been going for a long while. We've developed it, we've promoted it, we've overseas drivers, and I guess it is a street circuit after all, and I think it's just progressed that way.
Of course, next year you're going to be running to the same regulations that we're running here. Do you think the change to Group A is a good one?
Well, after seeing what I've saw today with the new cars and the new formula, I think it's excellent.
You see a big future for it?
Oh yes, my word, big future.
Ivan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, my mistake on the introduction, that was Ivan Stibbard, the man who organises Bathurst. Tim Schenken, of course, is the man from Cams in Australia, whom we spoke to a little earlier. The scene all set here for the Nissan Q500, Nissan Sport 500 race on the streets of Wellington. The circuit in excellent condition. We'll show you that in just a moment in a little more detail to have a look around this circuit and see exactly where it goes. Wellington residents will be aware of where the streets go and where the wharf area is, but for those of you who don't live in Wellington and are not familiar with the area, this is what the circuit looks like. Well, as they say, it's the same for everyone. No one has any prior advantage on this brand new Wellington street circuit. Dave Oxton has just driven it for us in the new VK Commodore. David, what is it like?
Well, in one word, Tony, exciting. It's just the best thing that we could have ever imagined.
On the day looked as though he was going quicker than anybody else. As we explained a little while ago, he stuck up a 1:32.5 that I had him unofficially at. 2 or 3 watches had him around the circuit at that, and it wasn't recognized initially. He subsequently went out twice in the day and went under 1:33. So Dick Johnson, unquestionably the quickest car here in qualifying on a single lap basis. Neville Crichton and Wayne Wilkinson's entry, the BMW beside him, that was a surprise to some people as well, because Kent Bajent's BMW was expected to be quicker. But the Crichton-Wilkinson car, 1:33.67. Then the Bajent low car, 1:33.94. So it's a Falcon on pole, and then 2 BMWs, then the Rover, and then Peter Brock and the VK Commodore, Tom Walkinshaw and Ron Dixon. Then Adams and Wolf, 1:40.42. Gulson O'Donnell, 1:37.14. The reason why you see some people ahead of others with slower times is that on the basis of the flying lap competition, the times for the front 8 competing in that flying lap competition overrode any previous qualifying times. So the quickest from practice were sectioned off into the flying lap competition, and those times count for pole and the front of the grid. And that's the second half of the grid. William James, 1:42.47, McGregor, Ryan and Tulloch, McIntyre and Roderick, Barry and Whitehouse, Hare and McGregor, McDonald and McDonald, Belvin and Belvin, and McKinnon and Power and Delcourt and Francevic. Of course, Delcourt and Francevic, that is an unrealistic place for them to be on the grid, and we don't expect it to be too many laps before they're working their way through the field. It will be Michel Delcourt to drive the car first, and running through the drivers who will be starting first, Dick Johnson will start first in the Falcon. Wayne Wilkinson will start in the Wilkinson Crichton BMW. Neil Lowe will drive the Bajent Lowe car first. Frank Sittner will start instead of John Morton. Tom Walkinshaw will start instead of Ron Dixon. Peter Brock will start instead of Larry Perkins. Paul Adams will start instead of Alan Wolfe. Gary Pedersen will start. McMillan will be the second driver. Bob Holden will start first. Dave Janes will start first. So that you know who it is in the car as we start off. Of course, there are 2 drivers in these long-distance races, and often it is very difficult to see through the window of the car. So just to let you know who is starting first in each of those cars. One of the features of this circuit that many people have talked about, and it's already become known as the infamous bridge, and one of the features of that is that if somebody comes off on that bridge and goes into the water, we have divers standing by, and while the race is in progress, those divers will be in the water, so that should anybody come off, they can get them out of the car very, very quickly. There you see the rescue team underneath that bridge. We hope, of course, as the drivers do, that nobody does come to grief there. I think it's unlikely that anybody who did come off would go through the edges of the bridge anyway, with the big lumps of wood that are there.
Well, it isn't a requirement by the overseas officials that the divers be there, but it's good to know the drivers are getting great reassurance to know that if something unfortunate happens, they're going to be out of those cars very quickly. 2 warm-up laps, and then the start of the Nissan Sport 500.
They're all off on the warm-up laps now, and any one of 6 cars realistically could win this race. We expect there to be a reasonable attrition rate, and at the end of 4 hours or so, it will be the car that has been the most consistent at the front of the field that wins. And Reg Cook, often that is not the quickest qualifier.
No, I think that the team here to do best will be get the best driver pairing of drivers who drive consistently fast the whole race, and my money still goes on Peter Brock and Larry Perkins, and I also think Michel Delcourt and Robbie Fanisevic in the Volvo. They're one-off cars in this race, but I think they'll go very, very quickly, and because of their driver pairings, they should be up amongst the top. Dick Johnson is an excellent driver and very, very quick. Bruce Anderson doesn't have the experience on street circuits like this, and I feel that that's why I picked the other two as being my favourites. Tom Walkinshaw and Ron Dickinson and the Rover have also got to be rated very highly as well, as our two New Zealanders, Kent Bagent, Neil Lowe and Wayne Wilkinson.
And of course the question that everybody sitting in the stands is going to be asked, what about the Kiwis? And surprising a lot of people, both the Wilkinson Crichton crew in the BMW and the Bagent Lowe crew in the other BMW. New Zealanders all, they have had a fair amount of experience this year in the cars, but of course, like everybody else, they are not accustomed to this street circuit, which is being used for the first time. But nevertheless, they have qualified second and third.
Well, the professional performance of both the Kiwi-entered BMWs in the recent Group A races was a good warm-up for them. I suppose a few of us thought that with the likes of Walkinshaw coming over in his Rover, which has a tremendous reputation, both the car and the driver, although not necessarily in the same pairing, we thought that possibly they'd start to show the way the overseas people do it. But in fact, the tremendous teamwork presentation of the JPS BMW and equally matched Kent Bagent entries with Neil Lowe, the pit work we've watched has been excellent, and we can really look forward to a Kiwis versus the world contest.
I think the chances of a New Zealand victory are very, very good.
Well, I have to agree with Reg after having had some driving experience with Peter Brock. I do know the way the man thinks. He's extremely confident. He went out in the warm-up session this morning, having got his engine problem sorted out. He's now down to times which are within half a second or so of the qualifying hot laps of his competitors, and he says, hey, I haven't even got this thing dialed in yet, but it steers well. His team is excellent in their pit work, and they're hungry for a win. So look for a fantastic debut performance from Peter Brock, Larry Perkins in 05 Commodore VK.
I think the very interesting point at the start is that the drivers who are starting off first are of a very, very high caliber. And if it comes to a race initially, Dick Johnson's tactics, I know, are to get away as quickly as he can in the first 10 laps and then to ease off to a pace that he thinks the car will last at.
Yes, I think what these drivers realise, the first few laps, because it's a tricky course and with all the tyres and obstacles that you can hit, that you must have the most experienced driver in there. And the one thing they will do is try to travel quickly but keep out of racing each other, because if they race each other too hard, they can do a lot of damage to the motor cars. So the top drivers are definitely in the #1 seats at the start of this race.
There's the man to watch, Dick Johnson, in the big pine pack Ford Falcon, the quickest qualifier, the only person who has gone under 1:33. And he did that 3 or 4 times yesterday.
So all the cars have finished their 2 warm-up laps. They've got to form up on the grid and get ready for their 2-minute board before this race starts.
Another point of interest is the difference in horsepower, the power-to-weight ratio of these cars. The BMWs have had a reputation of not being able to get off start lines from a clutch start very quickly. But balancing that is Dick Johnson, who has a lot more horsepower and a lot more low-down torque, has had some trouble breaking axles off the start line.
Yes, I think that I was talking to Bruce Anderson before, and he said the problem wasn't so much the start line which broke the axles, but very fast corners, and Dick Johnson will be trying very hard to get the lead at the beginning of this race. He knows that his car's quicker out of the tight corners, and he doesn't want to get bogged down behind the BMW. So I think Dick has accepted the fact they might break axles, but it's very important to get the lead, and that's what he'll be trying to do at the start of the race. And I'd expect to see Dick get a handy lead in the first lap and then be followed by 3 BMWs, and Peter Brock is liable to come through in the first lap and be anywhere except probably in the first position after lap 1.
I think in terms of the start, the man to watch might be Tom Walkinshaw in the Rover coming up through the field, because I would expect him to get a quicker start than the BMWs in front of him. There are 3 BMWs right in front of him and Peter Brock alongside him. Both of those will be trying to get through that field early on.
Yes, it's a narrow circuit initially, but with those tight hairpins and braking being very difficult, Walkinshaw has the ability to crash through this field in the first lap, but he wants to finish the race and not get involved in accidents, so I think he'd just be a bit cautious.
What a superb grid we have. What a superb grid of wonderful cars in Group A. A Falcon on the front, then 3 BMWs, then a VK Commodore, then the Rover Vitesse, and then we have a mixture of the smaller cars, the Fiat 130 Abarth, the Corolla GTs, the Alfa Romeo GTV, another Corolla GT, another Corolla GT, a Golf GTI. There's a wonderful mixture of cars
We've
here.
also got the Audi back there, and we mustn't forget the Volvo at the back of the grid. We've got to remember that Michel Delcourt is a very determined driver, and we should watch this man in the first lap. If anybody's going to cause any fireworks, it's that red car at the back of the grid.
The 1 minute board has gone up, not far away from a start now in the Nissan Sport 500. On the race, on the streets of Wellington. Engine's getting warm now, waiting for the flag to drop. In fact, it's a light start. They're away. The green light is going. They're away for a start. Dick Johnson out in the lead. Coming through on the inside, Peter Brock into third place. Neville Crichton in second. A great little battle. A very good start from Peter Brock, getting up to third place there, behind Neville Crichton. Dick Johnson leads. Neville Crichton second. Peter Brock third.
Brute horsepower of the big Falcon is just powering Dick Johnson away. This is what he wants to do, make that initial break, and the grunt is getting him out of the corners so fast.
Tom Walkinshaw, very aggressive, taking different lines. He's not going to sit back and wait to get through in the first few laps. He's going to be aggressive.
Gary Pedersen also getting an excellent start on the Fiat, up to sixth place.
Dick Johnson's got at least 100 metres on the field already now. Powers into the tight turns there, hard right into first gear. Neville Crichton following him hard in second place. Peter Brock already in third and flying.
Good start from Frank Sittner as well.
Frank Sittner, a very experienced European. He's driven on long circuits, and he said that he can be aggressive when he wants to be, and he's sure showing his talents now.
Well, Neville Crichton not letting Dick Johnson get too far away early on. Peter Brock still in third place, then Frank Sittner, then Kent Bajan.
Well, Frank Sittner, I think, may be a bit of a surprise here. He's really trying very hard, and he's not going to sit behind Peter Brock unless he has to.
Here's your leader on lap one, Dick Johnson of the mighty Ford Falcon, leading the Nissan Sport 500.
Dick Johnson through first, Neville Crichton through second, Peter Brock through third, then Frank Sittner, Kent Bajan, Tom Walkinshaw.
Tom Walkinshaw back there, I would have expected to be further up after lap one, but that's the way it is. The New Zealanders and the other overseas contingents have got ahead of him.
And already the Volvo up to about 8th place. They've come through half the field in the first lap, so watch for them coming through. Dick Johnson still pulling away this lead. I know this is his tactic. The flag you saw waved there has got oil on the track.
I was talking to Michel Delcourt before, and he said they wanted to go up as fast as possible, but he doesn't want to have an accident on the way. And he was very determined to get to the front, but not to have an accident. But Michel Delcourt has come right through this field, and you can see him in the picture there now. He's got right ahead of all the little cars, and he's trying very hard. It's Paul Adams in front of him in his Toyota Sprinter. Michel Delcourt is about to take him. A wonderful drive already, and he hasn't bent the car, so he'll be very pleased.
Wayne Wilkinson will be really rapt to be up in second place ahead of his arch rival Kiwi style Neville Kent Bajan's car, driven in this part by Neil Lowe. There we follow Wayne Wilkinson onto the bridge, through the gates, and then there's a wide line for Neil Lowe, very wide line. He'll lose that place to Tom Walkinshaw. No, he's fought back.
It seems to me, David, that Peter Brock is holding things up just a little.
Well, of course, we know that he's not that familiar with the speed he's required to keep in traffic. He hasn't done a lot of fast laps with cars, and he's just dialing himself in, as he calls it. Handily placed, but Neil Lowe will be kicking himself. He's lost a little momentum there and dropped back from the main group.
So there's the leader, Dick Johnson, pulling away that lead. That's his tactics. Wayne Wilkinson in second place in the Wilkinson Crichton BMW. Peter Brock still third. Frank Sittner behind him.
The Sittner and the Kent Bajan Neil Lowe car are running on Pirelli tyres, which we understand are a little bit harder than the Dunlop seen on Neville Crichton Wayne Wilkinson's car. Now this may be causing the tail end sliding that we're seeing on the Neil Lowe entry.
Neil Lowe's getting an awful lot of oversteer.
We'll watch this in the next few laps. He said that it takes about 4 laps to bring those tyres into temperature.
I was talking to Frank Sittner last night, and he says he can win this race because his tyres will give the same performance throughout the race. He's using a harder compound and they won't overheat, so he expects to get consistent lap times for the whole race. And he's holding a wonderful position at the moment, doing very, very well on a hard compound. So his consistency of performance will keep him there right away, and he's definitely being held up by Peter Brock at the moment, which is surprising. I expected Brock to be able to get away from Frank Sittner, but he's not.
This is an excellent race from Wayne Wilkinson in second place. This is Peter Brock and Frank Sittner behind him.
Frank Sittner getting very frustrated.
Wayne Wilkinson in second place with Dick Johnson pulling away the lead. Wilkinson not really being challenged by Brock, and Brock still appearing to hold up Frank Sittner a little. Neil Lowe still getting wide. Behind Neil Lowe is Tom Walkinshaw.
Well, mustn't forget the fact that I think the Volvo's catching a lot of them. I just saw a glimpse of it in the picture before. I'm fairly sure the Volvo's closing in on everybody.
We make that Volvo now in 7th place on the track.
There's Tom Walkinshaw in 6th. Very shortly we should see there it is, the Volvo is definitely closing in. Wow, when the power of that car catches up to the others, we're going to see some passing that we haven't seen before.
Superb driving from Michel Delcourt, the Belgian professional driver.
He had to do his practice laps in the first 3 sessions in an ordinary standard Nissan wide-track Bluebird.
But our race leader is still Dick Johnson, the man from Queensland, who has had so much bad luck in recent years. I know this was the way he wanted to do it, to get out in the first 10 laps and try and build the sort of lead that will allow him to cruise just a little and stay on times that the Falcon will last for. 150 laps of the race. And Dick Johnson really working very, very hard to pull that lead away. He knew from practice times yesterday that he was quicker than the rest of the field. The question mark has been over the reliability of the Falcon, as with the other cars in an endurance race. Wayne Wilkinson driving superbly in second place.
Getting a bit of breather, though, from Peter Brock holding up Frank Sittner. Frank Sittner is very frustrated to see him trying exceptionally hard to pass Peter Brock. And I feel if Frank Sittner can get past Peter Brock, he will start making inroads on Wayne Wilkinson. And Neil Lowe also catching up to closing on the Peter Brock.
Frank Sittner has in fact hit 2 curbs very hard. Over the bridge he hit a curb with the right front wheel, and coming into the pit straight, another curb. Now if he keeps that up, he'll be damaging a rim, and he certainly will be into the pits. So watch for that right front and left front wheel, as Sittner is desperately trying to find a hole past Peter Brock.
Peter Brock is proving a very, very hard man to pass.
Yes, he's got a V8 engine and gets out of the corners well, and they can't pass him on the straight, so the only way he can really, Frank Sittner can pass is under braking. But we mustn't forget the fact that the Volvo is closing on all of them. I mean, there's the Volvo in the back of your picture now in 7th place, and this is getting a scrap. Tom Walkinshaw getting frustrated and not being able to get through too, so look for fireworks. We're going to see someone trying to outbrake very shortly, and a car could go off at any time.
Well, it's an amazingly aggressive start for a 4-hour race.
It is, and I just can't get over this man, Michel Delcourt. He's just closing in every lap. Sittner trying hard, but not able to get past the V8 power of the Commodore.
Well, of course, we've seen this all before. When you get 3 or 4 cars this closely bunched, they slow down their own pace. And they're actually like Indian filing, but they're blocking their own paths of escape. They're making sure that people don't climb through gaps. So their actual pace has dropped. Now the Volvo is really closing up.
Very shortly, we're going to see some passing manoeuvres and some fireworks. Michel Delcourt is closing so quickly on this bunch. Almost catching them now.
Michel Delcourt's got a turboed engine, and he's got more power than the other cars, so he will be able to pass the BMWs and the Commodore on the straight, whereas at the moment the BMWs don't have the power of the Commodore on the straight, and they cannot get past under braking. So Michel Delcourt, when he closes up, he will be able to pass these cars and probably climb up to the 2nd position as the race progresses in the next half hour to hour.
So Wayne Wilkinson still hanging on to that 2nd place. Brock being challenged by Sittner there. Can't get past. Brock still 3rd. To Sittner 4th. This is Neil Lowe 5th.
Unbelievable motor racing in a Nissan Sport 500. So close. People trying so hard. It's a 4-hour race. And here we have Frank Sittner having a go at Peter Brock. He's got through. He'll be pleased. Neil Lowe trying to do the same thing.
What a dream opening for Dick Johnson. He's just powering away in the big Ford now. And this is the sort of thing he wanted to do. He said yesterday he wants to protect the brakes of the Ford, and he's going to do it by getting out, opening a lead, and softening on his brakes.
Neil Lowe has just got past Peter Brock.
That's a replay of the passing manoeuvre. Frank Sittner getting past Peter Brock, having sat there for the previous 3 laps. Nicely done. Neil Lowe tried to do the same behind him. Tom Walkinshaw pulling up the advantage as well. So now Dick Johnson starting to beat some back markers and some traffic. That's Bob Holden he's getting past now, having lapped him.
And he's about to lap the other Holden Commodore of Blue McKinnon, which is running on radial Firestone tyres, or maybe radial Dunlop tyres. Well, Peter Brock is... Oh, there's Michel Delcourt coming past Tom Walkinshaw on power. No, he got chopped out there. Tom Walkinshaw, an experienced man, chopped out. Michel Delcourt going under braking. Oh, what a race. Fantastic. These overseas drivers are really taking on. The turbo lag put Michel Delcourt out there and he dropped 100 yards. That's the problem with turbo cars.
That was almost a repeat of the situation in practice yesterday. Somebody going on the inside and Walkinshaw going on the outside. On that occasion he got T-boned off the track.
We're moving into lapping the cars already, and that's amazing in such a short time. These fast cars are moving through the tail enders now. And look at this, three wide into the turn.
Neil Lowe has got ahead of Frank Sittner. So Neil Lowe's car is now the tyres are warmed, it's closed right up. Peter Brock's been shoved right back out of it.
This is
and
a traffic
Blue McKinnon's car getting in the way. But here we have Neil Lowe ahead of Frank Sittner and Tom Walkinshaw getting up past Peter Brock now. Walkinshaw squeezing him right out. Peter Brock tried to chop him out. Walkinshaw having nothing of it. Well, we have a motor race. This is unreal for a long distance race.
This is the most amazingly aggressive start I've ever seen in a long-distance race.
The reason why we've got some of the best drivers in the world there. We knew these drivers are good, and they're just showing us how determined and good they are. And this man, Michel Delcourt, is going to surprise us all before the day's over.
Now, Neville, Wayne Wilkinson has got Neil Lowe climbing all over him, and this is the way we've seen it in the last Group A races in New Zealand. We've become used to seeing those two cars nose to tail. And now we have a race amongst the Kiwis for second place.
Well, Neil Lowe, who did a mammoth driving stint of nearly 4 hours in the Fence and the Hedges race, and was the first win that this BMW had in this country, is doing a very good job of catching up to Wayne Wilkinson in the black BMW as you see him.
We have John Power in the pits in the Phillips Commodore. That's the first official pit stop. We know that it's an unscheduled one because it's too soon for anything, but John Power in the Phillips VK Commodore in the pits.
Well, Wayne Wilkinson will be driving to orders. He'll be, Ray Stone, a team manager, will be saying don't race. Neil Lowe's out there trying very hard, doing what he did at the Fence and the Hedges and trying to get through and catch up to Dick Johnson.
There's Dick Johnson through, looking back to the gap now to Wayne Wilkinson. Neil Lowe climbing all over him.
Yeah, Dick Johnson's been held up by traffic there, and that could play a big part in this race as well.
For the first time in New Zealand long-distance races, as I understand it, we've got communication from the pits to the drivers. So this is something that we're used to overseas. So the people can get direct information to their drivers as it happens or when it's needed. Dick Johnson, the big Ford, the pine-packed Ford, sweeping through the bridge and onto the pit straight.
Now, it's obviously the traffic that's lost him all that space. He had an enormous lead, and getting through those black markers on a tight little street circuit like this has cost him an enormous amount of ground.
And it could cost him a lot of time as the race goes on, because the first person to lap the traffic usually has a harder time because the people don't notice it. But we notice here Wayne Wilkinson and Neil Lowe still having a scrap, and Neil Lowe very determined to get past Wayne Wilkinson. Tremendous dice points in New Zealand for second place.
Just have a look how close that gap is now. Dick Johnson really having to work very, very hard indeed in the Falcon to pull away his lead again. It all went to plan in the first couple of laps and he pulled away beautifully, but getting through the traffic has cost him that gap.
He's probably lost 10 seconds, I would say, Tony. He had such a tremendous lead. It'd be at least 10 seconds he's lost. And here's Neil Lowe having to go at Wayne Wilkinson. What a tremendous scrap. This can't last. Somebody's going to go off shortly.
These two don't seem to be slowing each other down too much in second place.
Okay, we're on the 9th lap of the Nissan Sport 500, and now your leader, as you know, Dick Johnson in the Ford, from Wayne Wilkinson fighting furiously with Neil Lowe. There we see Frank Sittner and Tom Walkinshaw. It's a very good race there for Michel Delcourt coming through in the Volvo. We expected it to go very quickly, but I don't think even this quickly was imaginable.
There is the Volvo, number 11, Michel Delcourt, the Belgian, who has come here and surprised so many people, working his way through the field.
Dick Johnson getting held up even more than we've seen before. Dick Johnson going into the pits. Well, there's a problem here. The new leader is now Wayne Wilkinson. We'll find out what's happened to Dick Johnson in the pits very shortly for you. But now we have a New Zealander leading this race. Wayne Wilkinson with Neil Lowe behind him. They're taking fuel on.
A lot of people predicted this would be a stop, but not so soon. Again, the fuel is just a precaution to make sure the car is full at all times. The driver will be talking to the co-driver. The wheel changes possibly, maybe he's overheated the tyres, but we'll hear this from our pit people.
Well, that means all the hard work has come to naught if he has overheated tyres.
Well, we don't know. There's certainly the fuel leakage. Yes, fuel spilling from the car, maybe a burst tank.
Well, the organisers will make them top that fuel up, wipe the fuel up before they're allowed to go out. So this is going to be a long fuel stop, pit stop, and it's going to affect their chances in the race. They're putting the front of the car up now, and maybe they're going to change those tyres as well. Well, this is a tragedy for Dick Johnson's chances of winning this race here. Their chances would now be very remote. They spent so much time in the pits.
The pace is so tough, it is unlikely, unrealistic that Dick Johnson could recover from a stop like this. And his rotten luck continues. He has rotten luck at Bathurst, rotten luck when he came to the B&H late last year, and here he is now, the pole man in the pits.
The way... Okay, we just heard from the pits that the problem with that car is the rear brakes. They've lost too much time now to be competitive because out in front at this stage, Wayne Wilkinson and Neil Lowe.
Neil Lowe has got back in the lead, and Wayne Wilkinson is in second. Frank Sintner's back in third place, and it looks like Tom Walkinshaw would be fourth, with Peter Brock in fifth place.
Neil Lowe is the race leader from Wayne Wilkinson. Frank Sintner behind him, Tom Walkinshaw behind him.
The Volvo, I think, has got past Peter Brock as well. So here we are, have the leader, Neil Lowe and his BMW. What a tremendous start for their race. They've come from fourth in the race to into the lead.
Well, Neil Lowe is regarded as the sprinter of the pair of them. One imagines that Kent Bajan said, Neil, you go first after your dynamite performance in the B&H. You go and set the pace, and I'll pick up the pieces at the end and hopefully take it through to the checkered flag.
We get another chance to have a look closely, as we did just then, to see just how hard these drivers have to work around parts of this circuit. Enormous amount of fighting the wheel.
Remembering what I said in practice, this car has left-hand drive and power steer. It is ideally suited to go through tight turns like the Taranaki gate there. That was a little bit of a spin there from the Phillips Commodore, but no harm out of the way of Neil Lowe, who's leading now with a comfortable gap back to Wayne Wilkinson.
We must be approaching the time of the race now, David, where somebody has to start looking at what times they can stay on all day, rather than this mad race we've had at the front.
Well, certainly these initial laps have been exciting, but they won't be very fast while they've got such a full fuel load. We haven't been bothered with time. Now the Volvo is fighting for the place with Tom Walkinshaw right in front of our screen.
He's just gone up to second position because Tom Walkinshaw was in second, and I think now that the Volvo, there's Tom Walkinshaw in second place, Michel Ducour in the Volvo in third place, and Frank Sintner is in fourth, and Wayne Wilkinson back into fifth place.
Traffic jam at the hairpin turns there, but Tom Walkinshaw holding his place, but he's got this turbo Volvo. You're normally used to seeing Volvo on the name of fast truck. Now we have this fast racing saloon, Group A Volvo, turbo power, and it's pressing Tom Walkinshaw, European Touring Car Champion.
Well, the Volvo should have more power on the straight, so it should be able to get past Tom Walkinshaw later on. But Tom Walkinshaw is a very determined man, and he's the European Touring Car Group A champion, so you can expect him to not let Michel Ducour go past too easy. But he's got smoke coming out of the back of his car, so anything could be happening or going wrong with that car and giving him a problem at the moment.
Michel Ducour seems to get a little bit of oversteer, a couple of those corners there. It's a little bit tail happy, but seems to be under control.
I think he's just plain excited with the way it's going. He's got so much horsepower at his disposal, and he's disposing with his field quite rapidly. He can sense that smoke coming from Tom Walkinshaw's rear end. We don't know what that is, whether it's dragging back from the engine, but it's smoking quite seriously. Now we know that Dick Johnson's had rear brake problems. In fact, it could be brake smoke from his rear end.
Let's go down and have a word with Dick Johnson, the unluckiest man here, and see what has happened to him.
Well, Dick, this is the most rotten luck possible.
Still, mate, I'm getting used to it, aren't I?
It's rear brakes, we believe.
Yeah, for some reason, it just 1 minute the pedal was there, next minute it was gone. I tell you, it gets pretty exciting when you end up with no brakes around here.
Well, speaking of exciting, it's one hell of a race, isn't it?
You could say that because you know, driving a car around here, mate, you get a bit busier than a bricklayer in Beirut, I'd reckon, hey?
Reckon you'll get back out there, Dick?
Oh, we'll have a go, yeah, why not?
Best of luck, Dick.
Thanks very much.
Dick Johnson, who was the fastest man on the circuit. It would have been intriguing to see if this Volvo in the hands of Michel Delcourt had a chance to practice fully, because the way it's going on the circuit, I couldn't help but think it would have been under 133. I think Tom Walkinshaw definitely has a problem with that Rover. It's not just the odd bit of smoke now, it's under power as well as the override.
I think that looks like it might be brakes as well, because the smoke's coming out from within the left rear wheel. It might be an oil seal, but it could also be brakes like Dick Johnson's, because these brakes are getting a hammering now that they never had in practice yesterday, because the Rover didn't do enough laps consistently in practice to heat the brakes up. But Michel Delcourt is all over him, and he's in third place, and at the moment they're not... Neil Lowe isn't able to pull away from these two cars very much either.
We'll try and get a word on what the problem is with Tom Walkinshaw's Rover, but at the moment it's being pushed by Michel Delcourt, having a go, not quick enough there.
Yeah, well, Tom Walkinshaw pushed him out there. Michel Delcourt trying to go into braking. Well, goodness gracious, he's had a go and he's done it. Is the turbo lag going to hold him up? Tom Walkinshaw trying to come the outside of him, but the turbo's away.
Look at these street fighting men. This is the sort of stuff that street racing is all about. Taking holes in, or gaps in corners that don't seem to be existing there. They just force their way through. Nothing of real class. And let's look at this on replay. Michel Delcourt taking the Volvo, taking past. Now that would definitely seem to be a rear brake problem on the Rover, Reg. It's coming out of that left rear wheel quite badly now.
Yes, I think the brakes have overheated, as Dick Johnson's has, but a marvellous manoeuvre from Michel Delcourt on a street circuit like that. A fantastic passing manoeuvre, something we would very rarely see today. But Tom Walkinshaw is a street fighter, and even though he's probably got brake problems, he's not slowing down. He's got the other BMWs behind him, and also Peter Brock. But so Tom Walkinshaw is just going to press on as hard as he can go, which is why he became this European saloon car champion last year.
The thing that intrigues me is how long the rear tyres, pieces falling off this Volvo, how long the rear tyres on the Volvo are going to last with the amount of oversteer that he's getting. He's almost driving it like a rally car in places.
I think they're using a hard compound, so it shouldn't matter too much, Tony. I just think Michel Delcourt is really taking advantage of the turbo power.
In fact, the left rear bumper has obviously caught a tyre and it's just flapping about. Sorry, the right rear bumper. And nothing's really going to do any damage, I wouldn't think. It's probably just a plastic moulding strip or something that's come adrift. And it won't be a problem with the officials because it's not a safety hazard at this stage.
If it was a problem with the officials, he would be black flagged. But as David says, that's not liable to happen for Michel Delcourt. And Michel Delcourt is now closing right in on Neil Lowe, our New Zealand leader.
So after 14 laps, the order is Neil Lowe in the BMW, Michel Delcourt in the Volvo, an amazing drive from the back of the grid, and Tom Walkinshaw still tenuously holding that third place.
This Nissan Sport 500 race has had a fantastic first 14 laps, something we never expected in our highest expectations of any street race.
Dick Johnson still has not rejoined the race, so we imagine the problem is taking some time to solve. Obviously, he has dropped from contention, but if he comes out, he's always good to watch on a circuit like this.
One thing I would expect with the Volvo is that when Robbie Franisevic gets in, he's an excellent driver and he'll be keeping up this pace. So I would expect the Volvo to possibly take the lead in the race later on. Here it is, Volvo.
Is Neil Lowe first on 15 laps, Michel Delcourt second on 15 laps, Tom Walkinshaw third on 15 laps, Frank Sittner fourth on 15 laps, fifth place is Wayne Wilkinson, and then sixth place is Peter Brock, seventh place is Paul Adams, in eighth place Gary Pedersen, but Paul Adams, the first in the 1600 class, had an amazing performance to be right up there in seventh place.
Yes, ahead of the 2-litre see it, Tony.
We're also ahead of the V6 Alfa Romeo, which we know had a lot of trouble in practice and was loaned an engine, as we told you earlier, by Tim Bailey in Auckland. Continental Cars loaned him an engine, but probably not as fast as he would have liked. Not a race engine.
I noticed when Tom Walkinshaw went past the pits last time, he was waving to his pit crew and pointing back, and this problem is getting worse and worse. I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't a caliper that isn't releasing the pads off the disc properly, and you're getting bad overheating brakes. But he's definitely waving at his pits, so we may see him crawl into pits later on.
Well, either the oil has run out or the smoke has burned out. It's certainly a lot less than it was, but oh no, there it is, back again.
Well, we've heard from the pits that he's coming in 2 laps, or in the next 2 laps, so we'll be able to find out when he gets in exactly what the problem is. Certainly it looks like the rear left-hand brake.
No, that actually, the blueness that smoke actually would suggest now that it is probably oil smoke. So I don't think it's a brake problem. I'm fairly sure it's probably a leaking oil seal in the diff. And Tom Walkinshaw will be coming into the pits next time. But what a marvellous drive. He's got a problem with his car and he's pressing on very hard. Here we have Dick Johnson going back out onto the circuit, way down in the race, but trying as he did, as they did the Benson Hedges. Come here to race and they're going to race.
Excuse me, Reg, but here's Wayne Wilkinson in the pits.
Wow, that's a surprise. He's coming here early. Maybe there's something wrong with him, or it's one of these strategies, but I can't understand why he's in the pits.
I'm quite sure at the end of the day, everybody is going to say it was the pace at the start that really cost a lot of people their entry.
Well, they haven't jacked the BMW up. They're not putting in fuel. There must be some other problem. They're talking to Wayne Wilkinson. We'll find out later on what the problem is.
Absolutely amazing. You walk around the pits before a race like this and everybody will normally say, look, it's a long race. We don't want to go out hard at the start.
Yes, but
the start of this one, when the green light went, everybody just went crazy.
You don't take any notice of drivers, Tony. When they get out and the key goes on and their brains go off and they say they're going to cruise, but they never do. And in this race, they haven't.
So being on the streets brings out the street racer in these drivers.
Certainly these street racers with his 5 or 6 front-running cars going so hard early on, someone had to pay the price. But here's the old Volvo. I shouldn't call it the old Volvo. We just think of it as the big red brick. But it's spewing its way through this pack of cars, and it looks reliable.
And it's running in second, a good, strong second position. And Frank Sittner is now in 3rd place. As I said before, he hoped to win the race, and he's sitting looking good. He hasn't lost too much distance to Neil Lowe.
Wayne Wilkinson has lost 25 seconds. They changed the right front tyre.
Well, he must have hit a curb somewhere or had a puncture. That's a quick pit stop.
The important news of the moment is that a New Zealander is in the lead. Neil Lowe in the Lowe Bajan BMW leads the race from Michel Delcourt in the Volvo, Tom Walkinshaw in the Rover still 3rd, and Frank Sittner 4th.
Well, of course, what Neil Lowe will be aiming to do in his team now, they've got a bit of a breather. We know that they've got the Volvo closing on them, but now their race plan will be in operation. The initial heat will have gone off. They'll be aiming for a pit stop at around about, say, 70 laps, 75 laps. I mean, that's half distance. We're racing the distance of 150 laps. Now, all the drivers who have stopped, their race plans have to be re-altered because they've had fuel on board, and they've had tyres, and they have to rewrite their race plan. But Neil Lowe running according to plan.
One of the questions that I haven't yet been able to find the answer to, they're a bit reluctant to tell us, is what the gas consumption is like on that Volvo, being a turbo.
They've got a 120-litre tank in there, and talking to them before, I think they only expect to make 1 fuel stop with the short race. Had it been the long race, I would expect it to have 2 fuel stops, but from what I understand, it's only going to be 1. But they don't know the fuel consumption either, because they've changed the diff ratio, as you said, from 3.2 to 3.9, so the fuel consumption will go up. So they've got their plans, but they could be not what they expect them to be yet.
We'll get some time for you as quickly as possible on that Volvo and see exactly what they're cruising round at. Cruising is probably the wrong word for it. The pace in the initial stages of this Nissan Sport 500 has been absolutely astonishing.
Talking about the other turbo car, behind Michel Delcourt at the moment is a Nissan Bluebird Turbo, which is one of the other 3 turbo cars in this race, and one we will see more of later on.
We're on lap 18 of the Nissan 500. Remember, 150 laps expected, and Peter Brock told us that he's expecting to do 75, 76 laps and stop for gas. Peter Brock, of course, dropping back from the main pack, but it's an endurance race, as we said earlier. He's pacing himself. He's still handily placed, but don't be confused. Dick Johnson is right out of this contest. He must have lost a good 4 or 5 laps, but he's got his old Bathurst sparring partner right in front of him.
Well, these two Australians will be having a lot of fun together now, and Peter Brock won't be being passed by Dick Johnson, but Dick Johnson will be getting a great buzz out of doing this at the moment.
I disagree, Rich. I think that Peter will be happy to let Dick get out of the way. If Dick's going to go at the speed that he was in practice, Neil Lowe is in the pits.
Well, an early pit stop for Neil Lowe as well. Well, it's all happening fast and furious here, and now the Volvo has taken the lead in the race.
Seems like nobody is exempt from the pit stops in this race, and I'm sure at the end of the day there are going to be a lot of people saying, what did that crazy pace at the front of the race cost us?
Well, Frank Sitner's story about that he can win this race is starting to come true, because he's now moved up because of the retirement. So he's in second place. So Michel Delcourt and Frank Sitner are looking